Okay, welcome to the coffee show, everyone. Biggest guest of all time so far, I guess I could say, none other than Morgan Eckroth. You might know them as Morgan Drinks Coffee. Welcome to the coffee show, Morgan.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
What's going down in Morgan Drinks Coffee land? Because you're always up to a lot of things. You're creating some unbelievable signature drinks. What's been news? You just said it's summer in the US and you've got a bit of downtime. So what have you been up to?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. So for basically the entirety of this summer and spring and full year, if we're being totally honest, I have been working on a book project that's not coming out in this moment. It's going to be out sometime next year, but that has been a really big push this summer, and we just finished the manuscript. So I feel like I'm on summer break right now, and then I'm about to jump back into international travel, gearing up for the next competition season. So it's a fun in-between season right now.
What's it like writing a manuscript? Because I've been in the process of writing some like operating procedures for my business, and I don't know, I've got like TikTok brain or something these days. It's hard to stay focused. So how do you lock in? What's your secret?
You know, it's been a really interesting learning process for myself on how to write a manuscript, because I'm kind of in the same boat where I have an attention span that wants to do everything all at once and has a really hard time locking in. So for me, what really helped was creating an environment that I wanted to be in. And so right now I'm here in my studio, and it's a multi-use space where I've got kind of a training lab set up with an espresso machine, and then I have more of a traditional office space. And so early on in the manuscript writing process, it was super, super important for me to have the tools and chair and just all the things to make that a space that I was willing to sit in for, 5 to 8 hours every day. And once that was in place, the writing and the wanting to write came in a lot easier. But it's an ongoing process. It's kind of hard to fight your brain and force it to do things that it doesn't always want to do.
So do you just lock in for 8 hours, or are you just short, sharp bursts sort of thing, or?
I'm a person that likes to focus on one thing for a really long period of time if I can. The word hyper focus, I think, is probably the most accurate word to the style of work that I do. So for me, what has worked best is truly coming in and sitting for 8 hours and just writing and working. I find when I start to break it up into smaller chunks, that's when things get lost. You interrupt kind of the creative flow. So it's been a full-time job for the last year for sure.
You mentioned competition just there, so I'll head there for a second. So you're making a comeback to barista competition. So you'll be entering the barista circuit in the next year or so. Is that correct?
That is the plan right now. Yes.
It's you've had an interesting journey, because I was there. Obviously, I'm based in Melbourne, and you participated in the World Barista Championship that was in Melbourne, and that's where you came second, which is an incredible result. And the guy who won, his name's Anthony Douglas. So I'm
shout out Anthony.
Shout out Anthony. But it's I see a lot of actually parallels between you and Anthony with your competition journey, because Anthony, I don't think people would really realize that. I'll remind again, he came second so many times in the Australian Barista Championship. I think it must have been 8 to 10 years that he competed, and he was always competing at a really, really high level. And there was just that one person that beat him every time. And then, when it did come his time to win the Australian Barista Championship, I think everyone in Australia knew that he was going to do really, really well.
Yeah.
And where I come bring this to you is, I think, I'm sure you're incredibly grateful to have had the competition success that you've had, but there would be a little part of you that it hurts to not win. There's in a barista competition, there's a winner and everyone else kind of goes home sad.
Sure. It's
so
the ebb
what,
and flow of competition for sure.
So what, to that end, how do you kind of deal with that, and what do you think you're doing to try and go to the next level?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I for anyone who's not like super familiar with my competition journey, I won the U.S. Barista Championship back in 2022, and then that was the year I came second in Worlds. At that point, like after I'd gotten second in Worlds for like the following, I think it was like 2 or 3 months, I thought I was done competing. I was kind of like, this is it. That's like. I was like, I guess we hang up and it wasn't like out of a want to stop competing, but it was like, I just kind of assumed that was the end of it all. And it took actually some really good advice from some coaches and some friends of mine of like, asking me whether I wanted to be done. And my genuine answer was no, because as you mentioned, there is like kind of this come down and like there's like some sadness like after competition. But for me, what I realized kind of in the wake of competing was, it's not like sadness for a second. Like I was like, that was way further than I ever thought I could get. So I was like super excited about that. But for me, the sadness was in thinking that was the last time I would ever do that. And I just like looked at myself and I was like, why don't you try it again? So I went back to competing the following 2 seasons of the U.S. Barista Championship. And actually, it's funny, I came in second both of those years. So it was kind of this like, it's like the curse of second. Like anyone who gets second once, it's like, you're going to get second a couple more times after that. But for me, competition has always been about the process and how it's pushed me as a competitor, but also just as a person, as a coffee professional. And so my reason for competing nowadays has shifted quite a bit. Like I think as a competitor, there is always this ingrained desire to do well, like that comes with the territory. But I've always found a majority of my joy in competing and wanting to compete comes from the preparation and the creative process and ideation of putting a routine together. And so I took off last season to judge and took a step back for the first time in probably like 5 or 6 years because I just needed to creatively recharge. I needed to figure out what I wanted to tackle and bring next to competition. And that year of judging and just like taking a step to the side was super, super important to me. But I feel like this season I'm coming back feeling like I really am excited to do this for the sake of doing it. And also feeling like I actually have an idea and like a routine that I'm excited to do, not just something that I have to do because I have to keep competing.
And that's a really exciting thing about competition. So for anyone who's listening in, we've got Morgan Eckroth here, and basically we're talking about barista competitions, and there's a few different formats, but basically you can take a theme related to coffee and you've got 15 minutes in the barista format to present 3 different drinks, so 4 of each drink, 4 beverages of 3 different styles, I should say. And you often have a theme when you're doing it. And I think one of the exciting things about it is that it's kind of like a project that you get to work on, and you really deliver a version of yourself. And I'm going through this with one of my staff members right now who's doing the Brewers Cup in Australia, and it's incredibly fun. And we've got an incredibly we're working on something incredibly cool, and it's just so fun to deliver that piece of yourself. I think competition is something that I want more of the world to kind of take note of. And I'm not talking about the coffee world here. I'm hoping there's like a sense of altruism among all the competitors now that what we're doing and having, people of your profile compete in the competition as well. I hope it brings more eyeballs to it, because I truly do think that'll create a better industry, and the coffee industry is growing so rapidly right now. Like crazy stuff's happening. You got people like Jimmy Butler from the NBA starting a coffee brand, which I think is also excellent for the industry. You got coffee selling for $30,000 US a kilo now. Who would have seen
Crazy
that coming
things.
5 years ago? So, do you feel that as well? Do you kind of hope that that collectively, not just yourself, but we can bring more eyeballs to the competition scene?
I hope so. I mean, I think a lot of us kind of like toss around this word, and it's how I view it too, but it's like barista competitions, whether it is through like the SCA barista competitions or independent groups like Barista League or anything like that. I mean, like it's coffee sports, and it's so much fun, and you would be hard pressed to find more passionate coffee individuals than the people who compete in these events. But at the same time, like there is this barrier of entry where, I mean, the tricky thing about barista routines, and I've experienced this with having family members who have watched live streams, and they don't know anything about coffee, but they're, you know, excited to kind of engage with this. But you can watch a routine, you can think that everything went perfectly, you can be like cheering on the competitor, like from the outside, like everything looks like they're going to do so well. And then if they don't, there's this question of what went wrong. And that's this kind of gap in flavor experience that is hard to translate, you know, to larger audiences. And so I get really, really excited nowadays about seeing more competitors and more like governing bodies of these barista competitions, like sharing and pushing more education about just like at a base level what these competitions are. Because they're super cool, and I think they're really fun for people to follow. But there is, I think, a pretty high barrier of like information entry to be a fan of these events versus something that's maybe a little bit more like cut and dry, and you can visually follow the rules.
Yeah, and I think even participation in the event itself, like let's be honest, you know, competing in the barista category particularly is expensive, and you know, I think
very probably like cost prohibitive.
Yeah, and so I've got to give a shout out to someone like Sasha Sestich, for example, who assisted Agnieszka Ryuska, the Polish representatives. She was the first female World Barista Championship ever, and Sasha supported her. And then there was also Martin Shabaya from Kenya. I mean, a lot of people like to, you know, kind of throw stones at Sasha and the Nucleus guys, but credit where credit's due. They do support competitors, and, you know, I think that's worth noting.
I think it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. Like we only get better if we're all willing to put in and support one another.
Yeah, well, I think part of being in coffee is you got to be willing to kind of will the good of the other, and sometimes that means, you know, giving resources, spending money, and you know, that goes to supporting producers that produce coffee, and, you know, like we're mentioning in competition. So you got to be if you're in this industry, that's something you should be prepared to do, really. All right, let's talk a bit about you. So you're based in Portland, Oregon. So on the West Coast. I used to have a dormie that was in college that was from Oregon State. So he was a Beavers guy. And literally before that, I was a Ducks guy. So are you Beavers or Ducks?
I'm a Beaver, hardcore. I grew up in Corvallis, Oregon, and then I got my bachelor's in marketing from Oregon State. So that's home turf for sure.
Okay, all right. So you're definitely a Beaver. College sports is so wild to me, and sometimes I say to people, I'm an American stuck in an Australian's body because I love American football. Like I'm a big time NFL fan. Houston Texans are my team. Kick off in 1 week. So but I see the tailgating and stuff that happens at college sports. I'm like, my goodness, it's incredible. Did you ever get around that when you were at college?
You know, that was never too much of my scene. I was a little bit of a workaholic during college. Like I was like in the cafe every minute that I wasn't in class. But having that sort of like energy around campus. I mean, the school I went to was like, as we were saying, like very, very sports heavy. It's like fun to have around. It like brings like a sort of life to the space that you kind of feel even if you aren't super active in that side.
And the way that American colleges are kind of portrayed in university, in movies and stuff like that. Like,
there's probably there's a lot of truth to it. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Like I'm sure it's not always what's seen on camera. But, so what made you fall in love with coffee? What was it that kind of, you know, initially sparked this joy for you? Because I understand you were studying marketing, and while you were studying marketing, coffee sort of came to you. So explain to the listener a bit of that. Yeah,
for sure. So I started working, or I first like discovered coffee a little bit later than most people. My family, like I didn't grow up in a coffee drinking family. And so I had like my first coffee, I think when I was probably right around 16, because I think I had just gotten my driver's license and finally had freedom to like go places. And so I walked into like my first specialty cafe, which ended up being the first shop I ever worked as a barista at. I think I ordered like a mocha, like super milky, super chocolatey, super sweet, just something like an entry-level coffee drink. And while I really enjoyed all the beverages that like came with that experience, the thing for me that really drew me in and made me want to start working as a barista was hospitality. Like I was lucky enough in that first cafe, the baristas there who later became my managers and really good friends, really like took care of me as a customer, and especially as like a very young customer who had a lot of questions, was probably pretty annoying. I didn't really know what I was doing, and they were all willing to answer questions. They were super kind. They didn't treat me like I was, you know, a young, annoying teenager like I was. And that was super special. It made me feel at home in coffee spaces in a way that made me want to then provide that experience to other people. So that was definitely the initial kind of instigator for my interest in coffee.
Have you ever had a moment where you get fed up with it? Because I did during COVID. I had some things go wrong for me business-wise, and I was just like, you know what? I'm so done with coffee. And I didn't drink coffee for 2.5 months, and looking back on it,
cold turkey.
Looking back on was crazy. But have you ever had moments where you're just like, man, this is just too crazy for me?
You know, there were definitely some moments during COVID. I mean, I've been through many like ebbs and flows of like barista burnout, where there have been periods of my life where I'm like, I love this. I feel like a superstar. This is the coolest job in existence. And then, you know, you have those weeks or months where you're like, this job sucks. Like everyone is so mean to me. I am physically exhausted. Like just there's always a wave to ride, but I don't find myself feeling that so much nowadays. I think I've really honed in on the things that make me love coffee and the things that I want to say when I'm talking about coffee, and keeping a focus on that rather than letting kind of the outside noise distract me has been definitely a skill that has been learned over many years, but it's one that I'm very happy to have developed, because I don't find myself experiencing those like burnout situations nearly as much as I used to, because back in the day, that was like a very regular cycle.
Well, let's chronicle that. So you sort of, I watched your interview with Cole Tarot on By the Drip. Shout out to them. Excellent podcast. You should all go and listen as well.
Good guys.
But pardon me. So you started doing video or content creation during COVID or just before, and then it just obviously blew up, or?
Yeah, just before actually. So I was working as a barista, I was going to school, and I had already started competing at that point. So coffee was already something that I was like, I want to do this as a job. In my brain, since I was getting a degree for marketing, I really thought it would be in marketing for like, you know, I was at the time looking at some of the larger coffee companies, thinking like Stumptown, Intelligentsia, Counterculture, like some of the larger US brands at the time. I had a background in photography, but video was already kind of trending to be the next big thing. And, you know, I was sitting here thinking, hey, I should probably like get a little bit of a handle on this, because it feels like video is going to be a more important skill than photography down the road. So that's what really prompted me to start creating content, was just like utilizing the tools that I had like in my back pocket, in my phone, and also the space that I was inhabiting, which was like my cafe job every day, and just starting to piece together clips and like make little story videos. And that was really the start of it. I had at the beginning like no intention of this ever becoming a full-time job, no even possible dreams that it would become what I'm doing today. It was purely like, I need to put some things on my resume that make it look like I can get a job after college.
Was there a video for you that just went nuts, that kicked everything off? Because, you know, I've seen, like, I spoke to Lance a few weeks ago, and he said that he's just been a consistent YouTuber, and, you know, the growth of his channel has just kind of been steady. And with you, I suspect that it's probably a little bit different. Like, was there like a video that just sort of kicked everything off. And can you explain what the video was and what the aftermath was?
Yeah, for sure. So I started out on TikTok was my very first platform that I ever created anything for. And it was early 2019. So TikTok was not the behemoth that it is today in social media. It was very, very embarrassing to be making videos for it. But I was like, this is easy and accessible. And I feel like I can do this and no one will see me like doing this. And how wrong I was, but the first video on that platform that ever, I think, did super well and kind of like started what I'm doing today was it was a barista sketch. So it was me playing both customer and barista. Back then I was a lot more like memey and kind of sardonic than I am today. But it was a video where the customer wanted a large latte, but all the regular sizes that I had were not large enough. They like consistently wanted something larger. And so like kind of the punchline of the video is me pulling out this like huge, like 5-gallon industrial, like Home Depot bucket and like pouring, and it was like ridiculous. And I, of course, had like super loud, like Vivaldi music in the background. And it was like just, just insane. But that was kind of like, the beginning of everything, because there were so many people in the comments being like, oh my gosh, this is relatable. Like we've had like moments like this. Like it was kind of this bonding of everyone who worked in customer service. And after that, I was like, hey, I've probably got like a bunch more stories like this. And so that was the beginning of the barista sketches that really kicked everything off, be it short form content or longer form YouTube.
And so what was the aftermath of that? Was it just like, did it just go super viral? Like, is it your most viewed video to date?
It's probably not my most viewed anymore. I remember like I think I was like at the gym or something and I had posted it and I didn't like go back and check. I was like, I posted it, I'm done. And then I opened up TikTok again a couple hours later and it had like 400,000 views. And I was like, oh no. It's like, whoops. And then I started getting messages from my friends sending me the video. And so even more so, I was like, oh God, people are like seeing this. And so for me, it was this moment of like, well, I can either run away from this, or if I am enjoying this, if I like creating that content, I could do more of this. And I obviously chose the latter route. But it was very much like it felt like I was in like the Wizard of Oz and they had like ripped up the curtain and I had just been like, oh yes, no, I am behind all of this.
That's hilarious.
Just red in the face.
I love the Wizard of Oz. It was one of my favorite movies growing up. My family and I all watched it. But I think like that kind of speaks to, I'm familiar with these sketches that you do. And I think they kind of, if you were to sort of have a brand, right? I think it's being very relatable to other people. And, you know, your content's, from what I always see, is very positive. Like, I don't think you post anything negative, nothing rude ever, nothing controversial, which is great. And I think that's why people like you and that's why people relate and that's why, you know, people have caught on. Have you ever had like some real life interactions with people? Like I'm sure you have if you're going to trade shows and stuff like that you just never would have imagined before.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's always a bit surreal. Like nowadays kind of everything I do under the umbrella of Morgan Drinks Coffee, like I treat it very much like a job in the sense that I have hours for myself. I have like, you know, I've just like structured everything to be really precise in the way that I need it to be to do this consistently. Cause it's, you know, especially in like the creative world, like burnout is such an easy thing to hit that my secondary job for myself is like structuring things so I don't hit that. And so sometimes for me, it can be very easy to kind of like abstract myself and being like, oh, this is the thing I do. And I make videos. But the thing that's always super humbling, like reminds me what a privilege it is to do this as a job. And also is like kind of the best part of this is getting to interact with people. Trade shows, of course, are a huge one, but it's even stuff like, it's not super uncommon just in like every day for people to come up occasionally and like say hi. And it's very special to be able to put faces to things and to actually have conversations with people of, most of my audience are like younger people in my age bracket who are working currently in service. And so to be able to like thank them for the customer service and hospitality they provide to people while also getting to like share those experiences with one another is super cool. Like it's, internet, whatever to the side, like being able to like have conversations with like-minded people who love doing the same thing I do is like the goal of all of this.
One thing that stood out to me when you did that podcast with Cole is like your persona on videos and your persona on a podcast, they're kind of different. And that's not saying like, you put on an act or anything, but
totally.
Like, you obviously have a style of videos. But you're a very bubbly person. You're very funny, and like I think this is kind of one of the cool parts of podcasting and long form content is you get to actually know people a lot better and who they are. So, for example, one of the things that I emailed you about and we were talking about is that you're a gamer from time to time.
I am. My deep dark secret.
Which really resonates with me. I'm a massive Pokemon guy at the moment, and
Love it.
And actually Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, one of the best games I've played in the past.
Yeah.
Did you play that? You obviously played it.
Oh, so many times. That's my like comfort game nowadays, where if I'm traveling, like if I'm just at home and bored, like I'll just pick up a save file and just like putz around. Like I'll just go run around in Hyrule Field for a while.
See, one thing about it that, and we'll keep this brief up. I understand people came here for the coffee.
We're having an intermission right now.
Yeah. One thing that I found about it is like you can kind of almost do anything you can imagine in that game. Like this is Zelda where, your typical mode of battle is sword and shield, archery, but you can also somehow now build a cart with a laser cannon attached to it that breathes fire and drive it through a thing of orcs and just like, do so much stuff. And I didn't think you would.
We've come so far from like the 3DS Ocarina of Time that I remember.
Yeah. But Zelda's got to be one of the best game franchises ever. And this is kind of what Nintendo does well. Like they keep it like, they've got their Mario, Pokemon, Zelda, Metroid once every decade. And like, they're good. That's a company. That's a business. And like, whereas, PlayStation, for example, you got games like, you're a fan of The Witcher, God of War, Call of Duty. Did you play God of War?
That is genuinely next up on my list to play. I have been in like kind of a rut of like trying to figure out what I want to play next. And my husband was like, you should play God of War. And I was like, I'll do that. So that's like probably in the next 2 weeks I will start it.
Honestly, God of War is one of the best games that I've ever played. Even the PlayStation 3 versions were unbelievable. What are some of your favorite movies? So I'm a big movie guy, and sci-fi, fantasy, they're my things. What is Morgan Eckroth into?
I'm pretty classic when it comes to my like movie franchises that I enjoy. I will say I probably one of the biggest like IPs that I've ever like really dived into is like I was a huge Star Wars person, like I still am to this day. But for me, it wasn't just the movies. Like my dad showed us Star Wars and we watched them in story order, so not release order. We watched them in story order, which controversial.
No, I whenever I introduced my girlfriend to Star Wars, I did the same thing. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, it's linear, like a linear story just I think works better. But for me, I think I was like 10 or 11 maybe, and I loved the world so much. I was already like really into reading like YA fantasy, and so Star Wars just felt like the perfect blend of fantasy and sci-fi, and I went super hard into the extended universe. So for me, I loved the Star Wars movies, but for me it was always more about like all the book series. Like I read like every single graphic novel and comic book under the sun. At our public library, you're able to like request books for them to purchase and bring in. And I remember requesting like, I think probably close to 20 to 30 Star Wars books over the course of my life. And so I like to think that the Corvallis Public Library's Star Wars section is a little bit to do with me. But that was the big one. I also was huge into Lord of the Rings. Like I read Narnia was like the first book my parents ever read to me. So Narnia was a favorite. Like a lot of the classics have become very, very close to my heart.
Yeah, see, Star Wars for me is the number one movie franchise ever. I've had like a holy trinity my whole life, but I think it's really turned into, a quadrangle now, a square.
Sure.
So Star Wars, the big one for me. Lord of the Rings is probably number 2. I just rewatched them all last week, actually. Harry Potter, number 3. And I'm still not over when Buckbeak got sentenced to death. That was like
this is something I completely missed in my childhood. I never read the Potter books as a kid. I have watched the movies now, but that's like I was in the right age range for it. But for me, it was always Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, and I missed that period that a lot of people had.
Well, I mean, there's still time, Morgan. There's still time. And then new to my list, like the fourth entrant would be Dune. Dune.
Yep.
So, I mean, the first one came out and I was like, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It was quite good, I thought. But the second one, I went to see that in the movie. I just thought, whatever, the new movie, I'll go see it. And I'm in my seat. The first hour is kind of a bit of a slow burn. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll see what's going on.
And then it goes.
And then it just cooks. And I'm like, whoa. It just got better and better.
I think Dune Denis Villeneuve's Dune will definitely go down as some of the most beautiful sci-fi like visuals that we will probably ever have. It's such a stunning movie.
Yeah, and I kind of like, I don't know what your take on it is, but I am not a fan of Star Wars 7, 8, and 9. And a lot of Star Wars fans struggle to articulate this, and they'll make it like a diversity. They'll say diversity ruined it, and I think that's a lot of shit because
it's a very silly take.
Well, what does it matter what the cast is? Like, it doesn't prevent you making a good movie. So I mean, we don't have to. We're gonna go into a full like nerd debate here.
My like thing is like, I think the overarching problems with those lie in a lot of the writing and the story and the lack of like script planning that happened where each movie on its own, except for maybe the last one, is pretty solid. Like I personally enjoyed The Last Jedi quite a bit. The Force Awakens I thought was great, and like individually they work, but threaded together as a trilogy, there's just so many like missing components. There's like so many things that just like feel like they don't fully like synergize with each other. Yeah.
See, look, I thought The Force Awakens was solid. It was like, like a strong, not great entry into like a new trilogy.
It brought everyone like back into it, like set the stage.
Yeah. Copy and paste A New Hope sort of thing in a few ways, but where it started to sort of go horribly wrong for me was actually The Last Jedi. I'm going to disagree with you on this one.
No, that's a very popular opinion. I live on the outskirts.
The way they killed off Luke Skywalker, I just thought, well, hang on, that's just like completely at odds with what the character was, in the original trilogy. And then The Last Jedi was just kind of like a combination omelet where
just kind of throwing everything against the wall.
The Rise of Skywalker, was just like, I don't know what happened there. There was too many cooks in the kitchen, just
for real,
total disaster. But anyway, who would have known that the formula to defeating Emperor Palpatine when he's like reincarnated, not one, but 2 lightsabers on a Force lightning? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just not picking up what you're putting down there. That is not way to end that character.
I was fully subscribed. I really wanted to believe the Snoke is Plagueis theory that was running around for so long, and the minute that was like tossed out the window, I was like, I'm done. Like, that's it.
Yeah. No, I thought they left a lot on the table there, and I'm a fan of like a 3-hour movie. Like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it if it's 2.5 hours. This is Star Wars. We get one every like 10 years.
You can
average.
Do it.
Yeah. Like, anyway, so I mean, we could talk about this.
This will be the next podcast.
Yeah, no, I'll see you in Milan.
Yeah.
We'll have one dedicated to this. Back to sort of I want to go back to the competition a little bit and explain to people sort of what goes on behind the scenes, because I think you would have had there'll be all the competitors that live, I guess, in the northern hemisphere, particularly the far north, would have had a far longer journey down to Melbourne, which is the southernmost city in Australia. So like incredibly big travel. What's it like packing a suitcase for a World Barista Championship coming from
a nightmare?
Oregon.
An absolute nightmare. It is like a game of it's strategizing on how not to break your near infinite supply of like glassware. Like we're carrying the most fragile things. Like for Melbourne specifically, my glassware that I was using for my signature beverage was very important. Like it was these custom made kintsugi cups that there was no possible way I could have like refound them in Melbourne. And so for me, that was the most vital thing that I was bringing. And so they were, first of all, packed inside like layers and layers and layers of like paper wrap, and then like in a box that was like a hard shell box, and then that box was like triple like bubble wrapped afterwards. And even then I was like, who knows what's going to happen? But the trickier thing, honestly, more so than bringing just my wares and whatnot, because I was pretty attuned to like packing those, was actually bringing in a lot of my ingredients to Australia. Like you all have some pretty like intense like rules about what you can bring in your carry-on, especially when it comes to like fruit products. And so I was using in my signature beverage lulo juice, and lulo is like a Colombian South American citrus. And so I like searched if I could find it in Australia. It seemed like an ingredient that was going to be near impossible to source. So I was like, all right, I'm bringing it. We'll do that. And so to bring it in, I had to first make sure it was all like commercially packaged and sealed. So I like got all the fruit pulp and like had it fully vac sealed. And then I also had to bring it in frozen into Australia, which meant I had to create like a dry ice cooler that then went into my suitcase, and just over the course of 24 hours, like hope and pray that it hadn't all melted by the time I arrived. And I remember getting to customs, and the agent was like, do you have anything to declare? And I was like, I have fruit. And like, I saw his eyebrows like go up, and I was like, but it is commercially packaged and it is still frozen. And thankfully, you know, I had done all the right things, and I'd also said all the right words, and he was like, yeah, great, wonderful, like get out of here. But that was like such a big stress, was bringing that and like milk and just like all this random stuff into Australia.
See, this is the thing with trying to get a little extra out of customs or airline officials, right? You just got to realize they have all the power. They have all the power. If you're trying to get something in, you have no leverage. As Donald Trump will say,
I'm like,
you got no cards to play.
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna do everything right and be so nice to you, and like, pretty please.
Yeah, because if you give them only the slightest bit of cheek, like it'll make their day. They'll throw your gear out. So you know, I actually took milk to a competitor in the United Arab Emirates in February. So they wanted some Australian milk, and they ended up winning the United Arab Emirates competition. But it was obscene. Like I was just carrying all my luggage for the trip, and then these two eskies. And when I got off at the other end, they're surprisingly chill about it over there. I was just like, "This is milk," and they're like, "Yeah, it's cool."
You're well trained with the like Australian customs systems. Like if you can manage and like maneuver and like do all and follow all the rules for that, like I feel like you're set for anywhere else.
Oh yeah, no, it's an administrative nightmare. But back to your own cortisol. So you know what. So you're just packing all these things, and then you got to like, did you have like a checklist? You would have had to have like an Excel spreadsheet for everything.
An Excel spreadsheet.
So you actually did have an Excel spreadsheet.
Basically, I'm like a very, naturally, I'm like a very scattered person who is kind of like, I just have like a billion sticky notes and hope that it works. And I have learned that about myself. And so I have like forced myself to learn how to be organized, to kind of proactively combat my natural instincts to just kind of go off the cuff. And so for like any competition season that I have, it's not in Excel, but I'll have like a Word document, like multiple Word documents and multiple like checklists and like accountability points where I am like quadruple checking everything I'm packing. I also like really intentionally pack about twice as much gear than I will need, because the main thing that I am always thinking about is contingencies for when things will go wrong, because there is always stuff that will go wrong. And so anticipating what those like problems are and then building in backups and like triple backups to every single problem you might encounter has served me really, really well over the years. But it is like a lot of forethought as to like, you know, I had for Australia, for example, I had a backup plan for like losing every single item. Like if I had lost my milk, I had a plan. If I had lost my Lulo, I had a plan. Like any of my tools, I had backups waiting. And that was like a real important piece of like kind of maintaining my sanity and like peace of mind throughout the process.
Yeah, I can imagine there were like just so many logistics, and then you know, you're kind of planning to take a team over there with you, which, you know, I'm sure you weren't responsible for all of them, but speaking of which, one person helping you was old mate Lance Hedrick.
My boy.
I believe. Yeah. What was it like working with him during the competition, and how did having a coach sort of assist you, and then B, having it be Lance Hedrick, who everyone knows is a legend in the industry?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, Lance and I have had so much fun throughout competition prep. We worked really closely together the 2022 season, both for US and Worlds, and then we worked remotely together for the 2023 season as well, because he had moved to Portugal at that point. And it's so fun. We are both like, I'm sure having talked to both of us now, we are both like talkers, and we're both pretty high energy most of the time. And so I feel like most of our conversations would be us just like kind of bouncing off the walls, throwing ideas out, like even if they were ridiculous. And like ultimately you have to kind of toss all that out to narrow in on something that will actually work. But it was super fun. It was him and then Andrea Allen, who is the 2020 US Barista champion. I was gonna say both Lance and Andrea Allen, who's one of the owners of Onyx and also the 2020 US Barista champion and world runner-up. They were both my coaches that year, and it was really great. I mean, it's very like, I love being a student. Like that is, over the course of my life, one of my favorite things to be. And so to be around people that I can like soak up information for, but also people that are comfortable giving me like feedback even when it's difficult, is like my favorite place to be in. And so it was a really, really great team to work with.
Yeah, and Andrea Allen herself is like someone who's accomplished a lot in you know, barista competitions. What's like, so your main focus at the moment with Morgan Drinks Coffee is actually creating drinks. And I think this has been like really incredible. Like I've seen so many recently that are like, I can't even keep up with, you know, what you're doing. What's your fascination with creating drinks?
Yeah. I kind of stumbled upon it like I seem to have for most things. You know, my background and my kind of start in signature beverage development really comes from barista competitions. And I think a lot of that is like apparent in the style and how I approach doing like even kind of like cafe focused drinks. But my favorite part every year of competition is like always working on the signature drink, like thinking about how the coffee gets to play and like build up other flavor components and how you get to build synergy there. Thinking about like visuals. I think one of the things that is often tricky about coffee is that no matter how intricate of a processing method, like how like high scoring a coffee is, it's always going to be like a brown liquid in a cup. And so with signature beverages, you get this fun opportunity to play with visuals and color and texture in ways that aren't possible with coffee on its own. And so that aspect has always been a draw to me. And I kind of like, for me, signature drinks nowadays are very much my creative outlet. So, you know, for some people, it's like painting, sketching, you know, for some people they're sculpting or whatever. And for me, I really view signature beverages as like, I love sharing them with people. I love making them like for cafe, like all this stuff, but more so than anything else, I'm like, I just have ideas in my brain. And for some reason, coffee beverages are the medium that works for me to share them.
What's your approach to building a drink? Because this is something I personally struggle with. I'm like so much more deep in the weeds of coffee itself than I am with building drinks. And a lot of the cafes that really do well, I guess you could say across the world now, but you know, what I've seen particularly in Melbourne is that there's these cafes that have like often just one signature drink that goes super viral. It's super enjoyable. And then just crowds of people just line up for it all the time. So to give you an example, that I went to a shop yesterday, brand new shop called Tone Coffee in Melbourne. And they have this drink called the Tiger Bomb. And it's like this citrus infused cream with, so on like milk, ice, shot of espresso, then the citrus infused cream with some zested orange on top. And it was lovely. It was incredible. Like I of all the signature drinks I've ever had, I think that's the best one. I was like, whoa. Yeah. So I personally struggle starting with that. So what's your approach when you're building a drink? Do you have like a formula? Are you looking for certain things? How do you go about it?
It depends. So I definitely have like a lot of systems and like methods in place that I utilize. I think the first thing that I usually start with is like, what story am I trying to tell with the beverage? Like, what do I want the person to feel when they're drinking it? Because I think, you know, really light, like carbonated, really refreshing drinks, like kind of emotionally feel different. Like they have a different purpose than something that is maybe like more dairy heavy and like spiced and like comforting and warming. Like the first thing I'm always thinking about is like story and emotion that I want to convey. And then after that, I usually find myself coming to the coffee choice. And this for me is always a really fun avenue because I'm a really big believer in the most successful signature drinks are, and this is going back to like, this is very much my barista competition training, but the most successful signature beverages are ones that are built with and for specific coffee and coffee profiles in mind, rather than something that you can just toss any coffee in and it'll be fine. I think that's where you kind of toe this line of like honoring both the coffee paired with other ingredients. Like the goal should be for the result to be greater than the sum of its parts. And so I'll think about coffee profile, processing, roast level are usually the two things that I focus on. And then the main thing is building out primary flavors, which is usually, maybe it's like a primary spice. For cold drinks, it's usually like a fruit juice or a citrus juice. After you decide that, building out auxiliary flavors, so those like complementing components that are going to amplify and kind of glue together the coffee and the primary flavor. And then the last two kind of components are texture. So really nailing and deciding what the texture of this beverage is going to be and figuring out how to incorporate that either into my ingredients or adding that in as an ingredient. And then the last thing is always visual. I never approach a drink visual first, but it is always the finishing step. So I'm thinking about garnish. I'm thinking about like what cup it's being served in, how that's impacting the drinking experience, and is there ways that I can add things via garnish or like aromatics on top that are going to further amplify the drinking experience. While I am guilty of it on occasion, like I will indulge in a non-functional garnish. I am a big believer in functional garnishes. So it's like if you're adding something, is it edible? Do they get to have it before? If it's aromatic, is it complementary to everything in the drinks? Like all of those kind of things are playing around in my brain as well.
See, when that last part that you finished on, like the having the functional or edible garnish, I'm a big fan of. I'm a bit controversial in my belief that I'm not opposed to bringing back the biscotti because, I think biscotti kind of gets a bad rap. Yeah, and I'm just like, my sweet tooth, selfish brain is just thinking, well, I get a biscuit with my coffee. What's not to like?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I'm all for that. What's been like your favorite drink that you've made? Because there are some fire drinks that you're creating, and what's one that kind of you're like, well, I can drink this day in, day out.
That's a good question. There's often the distinction of like drinks that I have made for competition, which is like a very specific style of drink made for very specific parameters. And then there's the ones that it's like I'm posting online, and those can be really whatever I want them to be. But honestly, the drink that I, to this day, probably have enjoyed the most, and the one that I'm the most proud of via the ideation process, was my signature course for the 2024 US Barista Championship. I was doing a beverage that story-wise was kind of encompassing of Jansen Farms out in Panama, which is where my coffee was sourced from. It was a beautiful, like, natural anaerobic geisha that was super floral, very like pink strawberry and soft berries. And I ended up creating a drink that was, first of all, nitrogenated, so it was super fluffy and like really just light and airy. And it tasted like pink starbursts and like orange cream soda. Like it was just so absolutely delicious. And it was served on a bed of like aromatic, like jasmine and bergamot dry ice. And so you had this like really floral, soft aroma wafting up to your nose as you took a sip of this really fun textural, like tropical drink. And that was like, that's what I would drink every day if I had the patience to make it. But it's very much a like once in a lifetime sort of beverage.
Where do you get inspiration from? Like, I mean, do you just cook this all yourself, or cook this up in your mind, or do you go to like cocktail bars and sort of get ideas from, like, how do you sort of spur your own creativity with this?
The answer is frankly all of the above. Like I find like inspiration in like, feels like kind of everything. Like the cocktail world is definitely a place that I look to a lot. I think also the world of like pastry and baking. I look to those worlds a lot specifically for like flavor combinations that are kind of like tried and true. So like baking, especially in pastry, like thinking about things like cardamom buns, or you have like lemon poppy seed. Like you just have like these wonderful, delicious things that like already work together. And so sometimes if I feel like I'm hitting a wall, I'll look at something like, here's an easy example because it already includes coffee, but like I'll look at like tiramisu and I'll be like, if I was to take those like core flavors and core ingredients and turn them into a coffee beverage, how would I do that? So it's like taking, you've already been given the paints, to make something, and it's just how are you then gonna like put them on the canvas is then the question. And so that for me is often a strategy that I utilize, but sometimes it's as simple as like I'll just have like a feeling. Like I think one time I made a beverage where I'd been walking outside and it had just rained, and I was like staring at the ground, and of course you kind of see these like rainbow oil slicks and the air smells like petrochlor, and I was like, if this was this is so silly, but I was like, if this was a beverage, if this moment here was a beverage, what would that be? And so sometimes it's kind of as abstract as that, but you work through it and sometimes you get somewhere pretty cool.
In having this conversation, I feel like you would, I don't know if you got to do this much when you were here, but you would absolutely love some of the native Australian ingredients that we have, because
yes,
they've been around for, thousands of years. So Australia's got obviously an Indigenous culture that I don't think gets as much, recognition and PR as they deserve. But they've been using like ingredients like lemon myrtle and strawberry gum and all these native Australian botanicals that are just absolutely incredible, and they pair really well with coffee. So I don't know if there's a supply over there in the US, or maybe I can even arrange to send you some. Would love to see some drinks.
Next time I'm in town, I will be sourcing.
So you're based in the US. I don't really. A lot of people across the world give Australia and Melbourne credit for being one of like the OG coffee scenes. I'm just going to click something out of my thing here. yeah, a lot of people give Melbourne and Australia credit for being like a really great coffee scene, and happy to accept it. What's the US coffee scene like? How would you characterize the US coffee scene in a nutshell? Because obviously you're such a big country, and I think specialty coffee is growing everywhere across the world. I don't quite feel like we're holding on to that as well as we once did anymore. And I think is Portland not the hotbed for a lot of coffee in America?
Pacific Northwest is definitely kind of like one of the original like regions in the US where like coffee started to really take off, especially like specialty, like Stumptown started here. And Seattle is a really huge coffee city as well. I think Portland's coffee scene is like, we have so many like fantastic roasters and cafes here. It's one of the really cool things that I am seeing the more I travel across the US is like there are so many new like burgeoning like specialty coffee scenes that are just like ramping up so quickly that it's kind of hard to say that Portland is maybe on the forefront of everything anymore. But we've got fantastic coffee, and I get super excited about places like Los Angeles has like an incredible coffee scene right now. Like they've got so many cool things happening. Houston, Texas is another like really, really great coffee community out there. Even I'm like Chicago has a lot of great coffee. It's hard to encompass all of the US's coffee culture in kind of like one sentence, just because it is so massive, and with the geography, like every single region really has kind of a distinct feel to it. But it's really hard to go to like a medium to large city nowadays and not find really good specialty, which is super cool.
Chicago's somewhere I want to go so bad.
Chicago rocks. I was just there, and it is the best.
Yeah, I've heard lots of good things, and I listened to a football podcast, and one of the hosts just moved to Chicago, and he's always raving about it, and I'm like, you know what, I really need to go to Chicago. New York seems like, I've never been to the US, so like, it all seems kind of crazy.
Yeah. It's the funniest thing is I have had friends who have like come to the US for the first time. They have like all these grand plans of like, especially like friends from Europe, where they're like, we'll go to like all these cities. And I'm like, no, you're going to go to one city, and then you'll have to come back and like pick a different one.
Yeah, well, I mean, on paper, it seems to me that, obviously I'd enjoy New York, Seattle, Portland. I'm planning a trip that hopefully I can go on this year, where I'd go to New York. I actually want to move to New York in the next couple of years. That's my plan. So,
New York is rad, yeah.
So go to New York, then travel over to Seattle, down to Portland, down to, I think San Francisco would be next, then Los Angeles, then fly home. Yeah, it just seems like
a dream trip. Those are some good spots for sure.
What's the drive like from Portland to San Francisco?
Portland to San Francisco is probably between, I hope I'm not wrong about this, I think 8 to 10 hours is my estimation.
Because I was reading it, something around there, but it kind of seems like to me it'll be, you know when the apes escape in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and like they go north of the Golden Gate Bridge? Is it just like trees, like that environment forever?
It's Northern California is gorgeous. It's not, I mean, I don't know the terrain of like Northern California nearly as well as I should. I know there's like a couple cities in between San Francisco and the start of Oregon, but it is like everything out there is just stunning. Like I personally think San Francisco and up of California should definitely be counted in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all looks like that same sort of topography, and it looks incredibly gorgeous. I'll finish on a few coffee questions before we wrap up. And one thing, we had some technical difficulties before, but I was going to ask you, how do you kind of deal with, you were saying that you're treating this as a business now, and that that's kind of what sustains what you're doing. How do you deal with writer's block whenever it comes up, or like a creative sort of slump, I guess, like where you're just struggling to come up with ideas? Like, what's your personal way of dealing with that?
It's a very, very good question. I have had, everything that I do nowadays, from like drink creation to writing to video work, is like all pretty much just me. Like I have had over the years like an editor or two that I've worked with, and I have a close friend who's kind of my creative like sounding block for a lot of things. But in terms of like shooting and filming and like all of that, like it's kind of just a one-person show nowadays. And so I have hit multiple phases of burnout, and I think early on in my career, like, in the last 4 or 5 years ago, my like gut instinct had been to kind of like push through it, where I'm like, oh, I just have to keep creating. Like if I just keep doing this, like eventually like something will shift and it'll work again. And that like never worked. Like was not the right strategy for me personally. I have really come to kind of like anticipate when I feel burnout starting to happen. And when I start to feel those signs of like feeling like I'm kind of scraping my brain for ideas, to just like let myself take a break. I am someone who really likes to work and doesn't really like, I don't really know how to take breaks. But it is like the absolute best thing you can do for your brain to recharge is to just stop for a little bit. Oftentimes, especially like, I mean, I'm sure you're like so familiar with it in, kind of the world of like internet content. Like the push is always like post, like you got to create more. You like can't fall behind the algorithm. It's like all these outside factors that make it feel very high pressure to generate, content or art at a rate that just like isn't like a human rate. Like it's not sustainable for most people. And so I have like, it's taken a lot of years to get here, but I've finally gotten to the point where I am totally comfortable saying, hey, I'm not creating anything for 2 weeks. Like that's just, in order for me to ever create something again, like I need to take that break, and that is okay. And so for me, that's always my top recommendation for people is like feel comfortable doing what you need to do and not what you think you need to do.
It's so true. And I experienced a bit of a crash and burn like a week or two ago because, I've been getting up at sometimes like for this morning, I get up at 3 a.m. and in Australian time. And I did that a few times last week for a few different things. And I got to interview Rachel from Esmeralda, which was incredibly an incredibly privileged thing to do. Lance a few weeks before that. But I guess where I differ from you is that I've got a cafe, and this I kind of do on the side. So really I work like 60, 70 hours a week.
For sure.
But pardon me, thankfully I've been able to, condense that a little bit. I've got an editor that helps, and, you end up developing a bit of structure to it, but
it's about putting the systems in place that can support you in what you need to do.
Yeah, and totally. And I think, I'm getting to the point now where we got sponsors. I'll tell you about those in a second. But the, my approach to this is I want it to be free for everyone. I don't want to have Patreon or anything like that, because
Sure.
I think baristas around the world, it's not like a heavily lucrative position. So, my give back to the coffee world is to, have a free channel. And, obviously to do that, I'll need to monetize it a little bit to be able to have, an editor, for example, and be able to travel and go do things. So
Sure.
To that end, that's been my approach. What are you planning for the next few years after this? So obviously you've got barista competition coming up. You've got a book deal. What? Yeah, I mean, that's probably enough. That's probably
like where does this all go?
Yeah.
No, that's a good question. I mean, frankly, it's one I ask myself constantly. For me, like my kind of guiding principle is like 5 years ago, I could have never imagined being where I am today and doing what I'm doing today. And it's been like a weird series of doors that have opened to get me here. And so I always get like hesitant to plan, to really like anticipate too far out, because I just like anticipate more weird things happening or opportunities that I like want to feel comfortable stepping into. For me right now, like competition is going to be a really big focus. Like that, once that season ramps up, like I basically turn that into like a full-time job hours wise. And so I'm kind of mentally prepping for that right now. working towards getting this book out next year, which is going to be a really huge project and has been for the last couple of years. And I don't know, I would like love to do something in brick and mortar someday. I don't know if that means a cafe. I don't know if that means something more experiential, a training lab. Like I'm not quite sure what that all means right now, or if it's some kind of amalgamation of all of that. But, you know, for me, the thing that is like consistently the most rewarding, like outside of the internet, is being able to serve coffee to people and not just a camera. And so finding my way back to being able to do that is, I think, kind of the long-term goal. And what shape that will take, I'm not quite sure, but like I think I'm going to get back there in the near future.
And that's a like incredibly brave move as well, because once you have that brick and mortar operation, like you're
tied down.
You're kind of tied to it and
Sure.
and things like that. And a good example of someone doing that recently is, do you know Jibby Little? Do you know who Jibby Little is?
Yes. Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah, so she's got the Jibby Jug, tremendous latte artist, but she opened up a cafe and brew bar in Sydney. And it's got to be one of the best cafes in Australia, I would say, because the quality of what she does is, you know, so high. And when she initially opened, I'm like, why would you do this? You know, you're doing perfectly great. You know, you're tying yourself down, and you might have some time constraints. But I think she's made it work. Like, it's just, she's doing so great. And, you know, if I'm imagining Morgan Eckroth creating a cafe, like, obviously I think signature drinks are going to be a huge part of that. You don't even need to have like a takeaway coffee thing. You could just be like a daytime coffee bar.
Honestly, that would kind of be the dream. The question is like, how sustainable is that? That's the really big, like, kind of testing question of like, is it what I want to do, or is it what will actually work, and what is the medium between all of that?
See, this is where I think actually there's a lot of opportunity these days for people that open a cafe or a hospitality business, because I really do feel like that a lot of cafes benefit from being specialists. Like with our cafe, we made a decision, no food, like we do a pastry here and there, but we'll just lock in on coffee. And it's been the best thing we've ever done, because it's scalable, you know, it's easily staffable, you know, and, you know, like keeping our focus now has been good. And I actually think there's a huge opportunity for people that are just specialists. Like people will come to you. You can probably just have one or two staff members and like 16 seats or whatever. The cost of a drink is a little bit higher. It's experiential. Sure. I actually feel like that would be huge. Not that my opinion really matters for much on this,
I mean,
like
all opinions matter in this world. I'm like, this is, you know, brick and mortar is scary. Like there's a reason that I haven't like really like I've had people, you know, this question has been asked before of like when are you opening up a cafe? And I'm like, that's terrified. I'm like, I know how to do this internet thing. Like that is a whole different both like skill set and world to operate in that I, you know, have just never really stepped into besides like working in cafes. And so it's something that is far in the distance, in the sense that I'm like, there's so much that I need to learn about this before I'm ready to tackle that challenge.
What other creators do you think you'd like to work with? You know, I don't know if you have already or not, but like I'm imagining Morgan Eckroth, James Hoffman crossover, and like just seems natural to me.
Oh, I'm sure James and I will do something sometime. There's I think 2 or 3 photos on the internet of us like at trade shows, and within our schedules, I'm like, that is the most either of us have been able to manage at this point. I don't know. I really love collaboration. I don't know if there's anyone necessarily like by name that's at the top of my list, but I get super excited about like collaboration that exists between coffee and like other skill sets and industries. Like I think like the intersection of coffee and like culinary, or coffee and cocktails, or coffee and like architecture, and like those sorts of things are always really, really interesting to me. And so I get excited to like work with anyone who is passionate about what they do. Like I think recently, I don't know if you're familiar with Salt and Straw. They're like a decently large like ice cream maker here in the US, but they're headquartered in Portland, and I had a chance to work with Tyler, who's their head ice cream maker and founder, and got to like make like coffee ice cream with him, and like stuff like that where it's just coffee in different contexts. Like that's what really, really excites me nowadays.
Yeah, I mean that all sounds terrific. I think like I would love to see you work with like a I mean just for my own selfish reasons, I think it'd be like cool to see you with someone like an Emma Chamberlain or a Jimmy Butler. You know, I think Jimmy went to
Sure.
Columbia with some of the Onyx crew, didn't he?
Yeah, a couple years ago, they went to La Palma.
Yeah. Yeah, La Palma El Toucan, one of the best coffee farms in the whole entire world. We'll wrap it up in a moment. I do just want to let people know about one of my sponsors, which is Time War. So I've got a Time War sculptor grinder on here. So they've been supporting the podcast for a few months now. So they've been my OG sponsor. So they help make this podcast available to you. So if you could, if you want to support a business that supports us, head to Time War. This is a sculptor grinder. It's pretty simple, easy to use. I actually brewed the best of Panama coffees on this. So you can do really great things with this, whether it's espresso or filter. They've got hand grinders available, brewers, scales, kettles, you name it, Time War. And if you want to support the channel, you could like, subscribe, leave a comment. All helps to grow the channel, which we want to just spread across the world and grow in more and more places. But I got to say a special thank you to you, Morgan, because, you coming on the podcast is enormously obviously helpful for me and what I want to do and creating a bigger audience and bringing more people into specialty coffee. And I'm sure you get so many requests to do something like this. And I just wanted to let you know on air that, I'm incredibly grateful for you accepting the invitation. And, Lance, a couple like this is, changing of my trajectory with the podcast. So you've done me a huge solid and I'm really, really appreciative of the opportunity.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This was a very fun conversation for sure.
I would just encourage you to go back and watch some of those Harry Potter films. Get a refresher course. They are tremendous. What's your favorite of the Star Wars spin-off series, by the way? Like
Andor. No competition. Andor.
Andor was good. I thought that second season was like it was a slow burn at the start. I didn't like the first 3 episodes, but they cooked in the end. That was some of the best.
Yeah.
Some of the best sets I guess I've seen in any movie or series ever, to be honest.
100%. They were robbed at the Emmys, I will say.
Well, what's one thing you would like to say before you go that we haven't spoken about? Like what's one thing Morgan Drinks Coffee would like to leave the coffee podcast world with?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'll just say the thing that I feel like I always say at the end of like interviews, which just like to kind of everyone out there is just like, let's be nice to each other. I think we are in like a period of time where like things are very loud. There's a lot going on in the world and coffee right now is very, very hard and is fluctuating every day in super scary ways. And I think we could all do to just be a little bit nice to each other.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think there's, even in the coffee community, I think a little bit of, division has arisen online lately and, not a big fan of it. Coffee's my escape for a lot of the world's problems. And, I understand that some people have issues with, the way things are done in coffee, but I 100% agree with you. I think, the world needs a few more, build bridges, not walls. So I think this is a wonderful community. And I guess what you're saying is not really exclusive to coffee. It's, applicable to everyone.
It's being human to one another, leaving room for conversation, but approaching it with care and empathy is the big thing.
One thing I'll try and get you to say before you go is there's a very Australian way of saying goodbye, and it's kind of my sign off for a lot of my videos, and it's hooroo. So
oh gosh, say it again.
Hooroo. So like
hooroo?
So I'll say like hooroo, mate. It's a very, very Australian thing to say. So I'm just gonna if I can I get a hooroo, mate, from
just a clean soundbite there.
Yeah.
Hooroo,
mate. Yes.
I feel like I don't have like it's not in my chest yet, but I feel like I could get there if I did it a couple more times.
And you'll see it creep up online from time to time now that you've heard it. But again, thank you so much for your time. It's been an incredible podcast. A few technical difficulties, but we got through there.
We made it.
But
footage is going to look great.
I think it will. But May the force be with you, Morgan.
To all of us.